Hey y'all, this is Marcy Ryder. I am here to talk about resume workshop, do a quick resume workshop with you all. Since I am the cooperative education instructor here on campus, a lot of my students have to do and complete a resume portfolio, so I wanted to make sure that you had some really great information available to you via video rather than just in writing. So this is not just for my students, it's for anyone that might be writing resume portfolio while here at Cleveland State, and I would be happy to look at that if you complete it and then get it to me. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. If you join in, feel free to just come on in and make your stuff at home. But I want to go over some quick things just so that you all can complete your degree. After you complete your degree, you can feel really comfortable with having a really great resume portfolio to land that job. So with that said, I want to start talking about quickly about resumes in general. If you're not even really quite sure what a resume is, it's really the way that you sell yourself from the very beginning to get the interview to then get the job. So honestly, it is something that everyone needs to have, not even when you graduate, but also as you're going through school to start networking with people and be able to get that on your resume as quickly as possible. So with that said, I'm going to just give you some quick facts about resumes and some suggestions on how to make yours better or start one and make it amazing from the beginning. But really, I want you to know that being a recruiter in the past, I can honestly tell you that about 50% of any of the resumes I got for any of the positions, honestly, I would just discard. And I would never really go back to those ever again unless they happen to send me for another position. And so really, there's tons of things that can lead to that disqualification, but that is pretty normal when it comes to hiring managers and recruiters that are looking for resumes to extend an interview for. Common different things that can disqualify resumes happen to be simple mistakes, grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes, confusing layouts that they might that the resume might have, job hopping back and forth, or just really messy or incomplete applications. In today's world, a lot of it is not just turning in a resume or attaching a resume to a website. It's also completing an application either online or an application by hand. And if those are either messy or incomplete, it just shows a lack of care and professionalism. So really that's one of those things that can easily get you knocked out of contention from the very beginning. So what I want to focus on is that other 50% that as recruiters or hiring managers that we do really look at and what it is that catches our attention to get those resumes really looked at and then compete against each other to get that interview. What would make you stand out to get that interview? So the first thing I want to talk about is the format of your resume. All resumes need to be in a very professional format. And what I mean by that, and I'm going to start with, is once you get the interview, to begin with, your resumes and your resume portfolios should be printed out, and they should be printed out on resume paper. What that is and what it looks like. This is an example of resume paper. You can get it at the dollar store, Walmart, a lot of places sell it, Staples, Office Depot, any of those places. And it's rather inexpensive, especially at the dollar store and places. But if you print on this, it's really just professional grade paper is really what it is. And I can tell you that it kind of has, it just feels a little bit different. It looks pretty much like paper, but it feels real different and has a little more professional experience view of it. So the first thing I will tell you when it comes to format is definitely get yourself some resume paper to take on interviews with you. It's going to make you stand out above the next person. And it shows that you put a little more effort in, which usually means that you're going to put more effort into the position, whatever that might be. So get yourself some resume paper. If you can't afford it or you don't want to go get it, come see me in my office if you're one of my students, and I have packs and packs of it. I will get you some. But that's the first thing. The second thing about the format is there are a lot of, on Word and Google Docs, they have these templates set up or wizards set up for you that you can just kind of pick your information. You kind of just pick your information and put it in where they tell you to put it. I'm going to tell you, especially for my class and for this assignment that I give my students, Do not use those. They're not allowed in my class, and you will be knocked for those on the resume grade. But just in general, if you're going to get a resume portfolio together, do not use those. The reason I'm going to tell you that is, as a hiring manager or recruiter that looks at resumes all day, we honestly can point them out and pick them out from a million miles away, those that are on Wizards and templates. It's not polished. It's really hard to update. You're gonna look like everyone else, and it's not gonna be unique to you, which is really what a lot of employers are wanting, is you to be unique and show your personality. So don't do them for my class, but I highly recommend not doing them in general. Just start from new, from fresh on either a Google Doc or a Word document. And the other thing I would tell you is, I kind of mentioned it, it's really hard to update those templates in Wizards, and you should be updating your resume at least once a year, I would recommend. I schedule mine every year for in the summer. Even if I'm not looking for a position, you never know what's going to happen, for one. But for two, you're not going to remember as the years go on and you continue to get projects and you're working on things and you're continuing to learn yourself about, different things and different topics in the workforce. You are not going to be able to remember all those things if you do not go back and update them yearly. So I recommend continually updating that, especially as you advance in your career. And then you can get rid of the things that have been quite a while since you've done those things. That will help you when you update to get rid of those things as well, and to really make your most recent information, most recent experience, what is on your resume. The other thing about professional formatting in your resume is, I simply kind of grazed over it already, but typos and grammar and spelling issues will be the first thing that will knock you out of contention. The reason I tell you this is because grammar and spelling is really easy, especially today when you're doing it on an Excel, or a Word or a Google document. They have these little red and blue squiggly lines. So it's pretty easy to see when you need to correct something. So if I get that on my end, say you send me your resume portfolio and I see a lot of red and blue squiggly lines when I pull it up on my computer, then I'm going to think to myself, they couldn't even take the time to go in and fix their resume. They're not going to take the time to put in to work with our customers or to get the knowledge they need for this position. So right into the trash can, that resume would go to me, or more like my mouse would go right over to the delete. So that's why I'm telling you, it's really important to do that. As well as I can tell you, especially when it's printed off, I have a resume. When I do this in person, we do a very interactive workshop. And one of those resumes that people never choose out of the 9 or 10 I have you choose from is one that is really qualified, but never gets chosen because of the font that's used. And it's a typewriter font. It's Courier New. It makes it look really, the font itself looks almost like a typewriter font. And a lot of people just look past it and throw it to the side. I will tell you, most people want to see the most common fonts that they're used to reading on a normal basis. And I always tell everyone that I'm working with on resumes, just stay with an Arial font or a Times New Roman font, and try to keep it not too small, not too big, probably like a 12 font. That way it is most like what you see on a normal basis when you're reading anything. So keep it with that when it comes to professional format. So that's the first thing about your resume. The second thing is really good resumes that get chosen to get interviews tend to be what I like to call packages. And I will tell you, and I use this probably every time I've given this workshop, but it's kind of like, and I will tell you my experience, I'm not from where I currently live, and I travel for Christmas. So I travel about 8 hours in a minivan with the kids and the dog and all that jazz. And that means I have a lot of Christmas presents that I take with me, right? So that's like the resume that I would be giving to my employer. But the thing is, when I leave my home, I don't put bows and the name tags and all of that on my packages. I wait till when I get there, because if not, they'd be destroyed by the dog, or there'd be food or snacks thrown at them. Who knows what might happen on a 9-hour trip, right? So when I get to my destination, I take those packages out of the minivan and I put them all together and make them look beautiful and worthy to give to their recipient. So the same thing as your resume, you want to have your resume have that bow on it, if that makes sense, and have it really ready to give to the employer. So with that, you want it to be a package. And so with a package, what I'm talking about with your resume, you want to make it not just a resume, you want to make it a resume portfolio. And what that includes is, and I'm sorry this is backwards, I will actually send it out to my students. And if you would like me to send it to you, just email me at MREITER, T as in Tom, so MREITER at clevelandstatecc.edu, and I will send this to you as well. But my apologies for it being backwards. Didn't even think that through this morning. So, but the package will have a cover letter, it will have your resume, and it will have a reference sheet included all in one. So that's like taking that little package and putting the bow and the name tag on it, if that makes sense, to give you kind of a visual in your head. So what I want to do is kind of go over quickly what is expected in a cover letter, what is expected in a reference sheet, and really how to kind of go behind and make that the full package, if that makes sense. So with that said, I want to start with the cover letter. And as I said, I know this is backwards, so I absolutely apologize. But a cover letter is, and you want to include a cover letter because that's where you can add information that's really pertinent to you in your situation. So let's say you were a stay-at-home mom, or you're changing careers, or you had a job, you had some space in between your jobs, which may look like job hopping. That cover letter is where you can explain that situation and what's going on in your life that might be looked at as negative from an employer, okay? So on that cover letter, the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to include a heading. And the heading, it's a professional business formatted letter is really what a cover letter is. And that starts with the heading. And the heading includes your name, your email address, your physical address, and your phone number. And so I'm going to walk you through a little bit of all of these. When you include your name, include your your legal name. If you go by Bubba, or you go by, I don't know, Luke, or if you go by Bill, whatever it might be, make sure that that is kind of to the side or in parentheses, so then they can absolutely pull your legal name when they need to, okay? As far as the email itself, I tell everybody this: the more professional the email, the better. I will tell you personally, I have just one account set up that is simply really my name, that is only for job hunting or my resume. So I know that when I go check that mail and I check it, you know, I have to remind myself to check it because that's not a normal email I'm checking. That is the only people that are going to use that is either spam, to be honest, or someone that's actually looking for me that has found my resume. So I recommend just using a very simple, one of the resumes I use, the email address is partytillyouDrop@yahoo.com. That's something I don't want to see on an email address when I'm trying to email somebody for to set up an interview. Because I would say party till you drop right into the trash can, to be honest. So just have it your name, make it simple. If you want to use your email, your Cougar State email, your Cleveland State email, use that. I mean, absolutely, that's a professional email that you can, that they will trust and they will respect when they see that. The other thing is reply to those emails if you get them. Definitely read them and reply. I know that's not in our normal everyday thing we do anymore for a lot of people, but we definitely need, especially when we're job hunting, to be checking our emails regularly. The same with address. What I want to tell you about is your addresses. If you have a P.O. box, feel free to use your P.O. box number. But the only thing I will let you know and I will suggest for you about your address is if you are in an area where it's just common for an employer to think, oh, those people will not drive from there, right? So like if it's a 45-minute drive for you to get to the company that you applied for, you might want to leave that address off, okay? So for here at Cleveland State, if you are applying for a job in Chattanooga and you live in Tellico Plains or you live in Von Orr, that might be something you want to leave off just so that people don't get biased about you from the very beginning by just looking at a resume. Now, that is not always going to happen, and hopefully it does not happen. But I'm not telling you to leave it off completely if you don't think it is, or if you want to let them know what a drive would be for you, that's fine. But I'm just bringing that up to your attention in case that is something that you are looking at or kind of wondering about. And the last thing is your phone number. Definitely leave your phone number, and a phone number that they can reach you at, usually a cell number now. And what I'm going to tell you about your phone number is pretty much the basic stuff. For one, answer it. I know it's really hard, and a lot of people don't want, believe me, I'm there. I don't like to answer my phone if I don't have to. I'd rather text or something. But if I am in the middle of a job hunt, I'm answering my phone no matter what number it is, okay, if I know it or not. So answer your phone. The second thing I'll tell you about your phone number is make sure that your voicemail is set up. I can't tell you as a recruiter how many times I've gotten a voicemail and I wanted to set up an interview with somebody and get to the voicemail and it says voicemail's not set up. It drives me crazy. So not just driving me crazy, it just shows unprofessionalism as well. So definitely get your voicemail set up. And kind of to piggyback off that as well, if it's not set up, I can't leave you a message, but if it's full as well, if your voicemail is full and you're not checking your messages and deleting them, then I cannot leave you a voicemail as well. So please go ahead and keep your voicemail box as empty as possible so that people can leave you messages. The only other thing I'm going to tell you about your phone number is make sure that you are answering it and not a cousin or a dad or a mom or an aunt or somebody, anyone that might be not you and that might not be professional in manner, okay? So always be sure that you, when you're job hunting, you have your resume out there, you're answering your phone in a professional manner. And the other thing is now a lot of companies, especially in larger metropolitan areas, are using and have bought software that will allow them to text you if they want to set up an interview with you based upon your resume. With that said, a lot of that software states that they cannot send you a text message legally without your okay. So the way to get around that is if next to your phone number, it's okay to text you to set up an interview. In parentheses after your number, literally write text okay. That gives that software the availability to be able to text you and get you set up for an interview right away. And if you're the first one in usually, because they don't have to call and wait for you to call back, all those different things, then you're the first one to interview. So just a little thing I have been mentioning to a lot of people lately. So from what I've heard in industry, it's the new kind of rise in software for recruiters. So just to let you know. The other thing is, so that would be your heading under your cover letter. The next thing on a cover letter would be you need to use the company's name and their address. So Cleveland State Community College, 3535 Atkinson Drive, Cleveland, Tennessee, 37312, whatever the zip code is. Make sure to put that there because that shows that's a professional business letter format. And the next thing you would want to do is put a salutation. What a salutation is, if you're not sure really what that word's meaning is, it is where it says, dear so-and-so. So, dear HR department, dear Sue Smith. If you have a certain name, definitely use it. If you have a department, use it. The best thing I can tell you not to do is write, dear whom it may concern, because that shows a lack of care or a lack of really trying to find out who you're working with and who needs to know your information. And I can tell you there's a lot of ways today to find out, at least if they have like an HR department or if they have a certain name associated with that HR department, a lot of ways to figure that out. So please try and find that if possible when you're writing that cover letter. Sometimes it's in the job description as well. So definitely take that little extra time. It means it really does add up in the long run. So dear whatever person you find. And then you go to the body of the cover letter. And like I said, this is where you can add info that's pertinent to you. Okay, I always tell people try to keep it to 3 small paragraphs. with the first one explaining where you heard about this position. So if you heard about it on, I don't know, Indeed.com, make sure to write that. If you heard about it from an instructor, or if you heard about it from maybe an employee that works there, make sure that they know that. It's a way for you to kind of connect at the very beginning and allow those that employer to figure out as well how to market for their positions, if nothing else, okay? But the second thing you want to include is really what makes you qualified. Why are you the person for this job, right? And I don't mean to write a paragraph. I want some very basic expertise and skills mentioned, and maybe some professional attributes that make you really stand out. So maybe if you're a good problem solver, or if you're really creative, whatever the job description might say, that's where you're going to want to play off that as well and figure out what those attributes they want are. And that's where I include it in that second paragraph. And that's where you can also include if you happen to be a stay-at-home mom or changing careers or any of that pertinent information to you. And then the last paragraph that I always tell my students to use or to include is how to reach you. And so what I mean by how to reach you is if you would rather them call or if you'd rather them text you, make sure they know that, or email or whatever it is, however you want to be reached so that it's the easiest and quickest way for you to be reached. That is what I want you to write in that last paragraph, as well as it's kind of a closing statement. If you ever take a sales class, this is what they'll tell you. It's a kind of a way to close the sell. And this is a way to close the interview process to get an interview. So put it back in there, put the ball back in their court is what I want to tell you. So in that paragraph, it should say, I look forward to hearing from you. The best way to reach me is via text message at blah, 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 the number. If I don't hear from you within a week, I will go ahead and reach back out to you to make sure that you've received all the information that you need from me to make an informed decision. So see, that's putting the ball back in their court. It gives you a time when if you don't hear from them, you have the right, you can call back because you put that in that one little paragraph in the cover sheet, okay? So that's the body of the cover letter. And then the last thing is a closing. And the closing is pretty simple. It's just a closing kind of quick remark. So thank you, sincerely, best wishes, something of that sort. And then your name. So make sure that, again, you're using your legal name, and you can sign it. If you print it off, you can sign it, but if not, you won't be able to sign it. So that's the cover letter in general. So when you're talking about that package and getting that bow on that package, that's part of that bow, okay? The other part of that bow is kind of like the name tag that you put on the package. So we'll call the cover letter the bow, and we'll call the reference sheet the name tag, okay? So we talked about the bow and how to get that on your package. Now, the name tag. The reference sheet is just what it sounds like. It's including your references. And so a lot of resumes, and especially a lot of templates that you see, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot, is it'll say references upon request at the bottom. I'm going to tell you a real world example of why I don't want you to do that, and I want you to put your name tag and this stuff on your name tag, which I'm going to talk about in a second. In a real world experience, I have been on I came here from, neither here nor there, but I came from California. And when I worked in California at an educational institution in California, I was on a committee to hire one of the administrative positions. It was a campus president. And so there was about 10 people on the committee. And we had received hundreds upon hundreds of resumes. We finally had narrowed it down to about 20, maybe 30 resumes. And we were all in this conference room trying to decide which 5 out of those 30 resumes we wanted to invite in for interviews. And so we were all kind of sitting there scratching our heads thinking, what are we, we've already narrowed down all of these resumes to this small amount. How are we going to even start to narrow it down to just 5? And one of the gentlemen that was on my committee with me said, well, why don't we get rid of all of those that say references upon request? And we all looked at him like, what are you talking about? Why would we do that? And he said, well, to me, he said, that just makes me feel like they can't take the time and the energy that I would want a campus president to put into their position. If they can't do that and include their references, that just shows that they're just not quite as committed as I would want them to be. And so we all looked at him and we said, I absolutely agree with you. So that literally got rid of about half of those resumes. So it made our job a lot easier to figure out who we wanted to interview. So that's a real world example of why I want you all to not write reference on request. I want you to put that name tag on your package. I want you to include your references in a reference sheet, okay? And so make it its own document. I always say, and I always tell my students, start with your cover letter, make that a document. On the same file, make your resume the next one, and then page break and make your reference sheet, okay? On that reference sheet, what I want to see is, I want to see 3 to 5 professional references. What I mean by professional references is, I don't want to hear from your dad, I don't want to hear from your mom, I don't want to hear from Uncle Bob or Aunt Karen. I don't want any of that, because those people, they love you and they're going to tell me how amazing you are no matter what I ask them, okay? What I want to know and who I want for references are people that know what your work ethic is like, okay? So that could be supervisors, managers, instructors, pastors, volunteer coordinators, anything of that sort. Someone that's has seen what you do and how you work as a person. That's what I want you to use. If you're one of my students, feel free, you can use me. Just let me know you're going to use me. And that's what I want to remind you about all of your references. No matter who it is you're using, make sure that you let them know that you are putting them down as a reference and you are job hunting. The reason being is, and I'll give you my example, if I have numerous students and I've been teaching for quite a while, so I've had thousands of students over the years. So if Jim Bob uses me for a reference, and ABC company calls me and says, hey, Jim Bob put you down for a reference, can you tell me what his work ethic was like? It's going to take me a minute, right? Like I know I love all my students and I love you all, but I cannot always remember a lot. I have a mom brain, I'm not going to lie. So if Jim Bob had called me the day before and said, hey, Mrs. Ryder, do you remember me? I was in your such and such class. This was, what we did. My grade was this. This was the work I did for you. Can I send you an email just to, with my resume to remind you? Then I would say absolutely. Yeah. And then when ABC company called me, I could be like, oh yeah, Jim Bob and I just talked. He reminded me because it's been a while, but yes, I do remember him, and this was what his work ethic was like, blah, 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 blah. So they're prepared to talk to that employer and really sell you, if that makes sense. The other thing is, I want you to include, for each of those references, I want you to include their name. I want you to include their title that they have, whatever it might be, instructor, pastor, whatever it might be, the company that they work with or organization, and their city and state that they are in. The reason I'm saying that, and a lot of people are like, why leave a city and state? I don't need the whole address, I just need a city and state. And that's because of situations like me. I told you I came from California. And when I moved to my current location, a lot of my references were from California because they were the most recent people that knew my work ethic. So it might have been really confusing or really odd if somebody that was calling my references at 8 a.m. in the morning Eastern time were calling people from California. It was 5 a.m. at that time, right, in California. So I don't really think my references are going to answer at 5 a.m. in the morning, but that might not even play into account if I would not have put the city and state as my references. So just a thought, and you might never move from this area or this time zone, but someone might know somebody from that city or state. It just is a good networking piece to make sure that you get in that real kind of movement and example of using that city and state and placing that there. The other thing is, make sure to include their phone number, because that's how they're going to contact them most likely, and an email if possible, because a lot of people do like to, as they're in their kind of work zone, kind of focused in, they just quickly email somebody if they can't get them on the phone. So that's what I include. That's what I expect to see on that reference sheet or that name tag to go on your package. So really, as a package, that's what we want to see. We want to see that cover letter with these items included in there, the resume, which we're going to talk about in a lot more detail next, and then the reference sheet as well. Okay. So the next thing to talk about is your education section that you are going to put on in your resume, because a lot of this stuff now that I'm going to talk about is all about the resume itself. Okay. Your education, especially if you're a current student, you want to expand that education section. Okay. This is something that you are putting effort into right now, and it is showing that you are you're kind of maybe a step ahead of that next person that might be applying for a job, because you're putting in that effort to get a degree. So expand that. What I mean by that is, write Cleveland State Community College, Cleveland, Tennessee, expected graduation date, rather than put a graduation date, like a start and end date. This can cover you from being somebody judging you from the very beginning by just looking at a resume. If you write expected graduation date. So if you started in the fall and you expect to graduate in spring of 2021, write expected graduation, spring 2021, okay? The reason I say this is things happen. Sometimes a lot of people have been just trained to think that a community college degree will only take 2 years. Now, things happen, accidents happen. You might have kids that need your attention for a while. You never know what could happen, and that could take more than 2 years, or you might need to retake a few courses to really engage yourself and figure out what it was that you needed to learn that you didn't get the first time, okay? And that's totally fine. Failure is okay. It's the best place you can learn is failure, is what I always tell people. But I don't want anyone to judge you based upon that. So instead of putting a start and end date, just write expected graduation, whatever it might be. Then no one even knows when you started. They just know when you're going to graduate or did graduate, okay? And the other thing I'll tell you about that is list any courses that are relevant training for you. So if you're a nursing student, make sure you're writing those nursing classes down that you've taken. If you're an accounting student, make sure you're writing down accounting classes and business classes that are relevant to that career, right? If you're going into engineering, make sure that you're putting in math classes or any type of engineering class that you might be taking, okay? I could come up with everything. So if you can't think of those, let me know. I'll walk you through that with what degree that you're working on, okay? But expand that education section as much as you can. A lot of students without any experience, this is a way that you can get that experience a little bit on your resume because you've been training in to get into that field, okay? The other thing is on the beginning of your resume, I always tell people, think of a resume as a book. You want it, I can tell you, there's been numerous books in my life that I've started about the first chapter and then I just sit down and never go back to because they don't interest me, they don't catch my attention, all of those different things, right? Think of your resume the exact same way. You want it to be a really good, eye-catching, attention-catching book that they want to read more about, okay? And so that very first section of your resume, some people call it summary of qualifications, some people call it professional profile, whatever you want to call it, just don't call it objective, okay? The reason I'm telling you this is because if you put objective and put my objective is to get a job as a accounting assistant, whatever it might be, right? They already know that, right? Because you're applying for the job that they just wrote the description for and then you're going to interview for, right? They don't want to know what it is that you want because they already know what it is that you want. They want you to tell them really why they should pick you, why they want you. Okay, so that's what that first section should tell me. They should tell me, it should highlight your years of experience, your education, any kind of expertise you have. So if you have certifications or you're bilingual or trilingual, whatever it might be, or any kind of skills you might have, especially based on that job description, that's what they want to see there. Also, I want you to highlight in that section your professional attributes, as I talked about before, that are relevant to that job that you're applying for. So problem solver, works well with others, team player, all of those things that might be in a job description that are kind of more of the soft skills, if that makes sense. Put those in. And that's what I want to see, right? Because that's going to catch my attention and be like, oh, this is just the person I want to see, that I wrote about in my job description. I want to know more about this person. So that's what I want to see at the very beginning of your resume. I don't want to see an objective. I don't want to see any of that. I really want to see you sell yourself from the very beginning, no matter, even if you're a brand new student with no experience, you can sell yourself, okay? The one thing I will tell you is with resumes, of course, there's going to be a personal preference when recruiters or hiring managers are looking. Try not to be too wordy, try not to be too brief. What I can tell you about that is create your best portfolio that's really genuine and reflects your abilities. And the only other thing I could tell you is really try to seek some advice from somebody that's in your field currently, and look at their resume to see really what it might be that got them their position, if that makes sense with their resume portfolio. So definitely seek some advice, and that will help you with references as well. The other thing is, remember, whatever you're putting on your resume, it should always answer the question of how are you qualified for this job that you're applying for. And really it should give relevant education experience, because all of that, and show that you're eager to learn or you're fast learner, all those different things. Just remember, that's what they want to see, and that's what they're really thinking in the back of their head as they're reading through your resume. What is this person gonna bring to my organization? What am I not going to have to train this person on? All those different things. So show them how you are qualified without even them seeing you or meeting you, okay? The other thing I can tell you and give you a little quick piece of advice, a lot of you are in my co-op classes, which is a great start because you're getting, even if you're currently working and using this as an internship course, this is a way for you to gain experience or gain projects or work on those goals that I gave you to add to your resume, because that is really what an internship is part of the reason why people take internships or do service learning, which is volunteer work, is so that they can really gain relevant experience for one and have something to put on their resume. So don't forget that if you've ever volunteered with anything or you're currently in an internship, please add that to your resume. That really shows that you're putting in that extra effort, okay? And that's really why we try to set up a lot of my co-op classes into curriculum. So like advanced business students, a lot of you are working in the field and you're like, why am I even taking this class? It's so that you can really show your current employer why they have you, why they hired you, but what makes you good at your job currently, or what could make you better at your current job, or what could make you move up the corporate ladder, if that makes sense. So think of it from that aspect, not just we're having you do internship hours, if that makes sense, okay? But definitely put that on your resume as well. And the other thing I can tell you about resumes is, and what will kind of make you stand out from the next resume, is expanding your duties or giving yourself credit for things that you are doing or have done at past positions. This is where you sell yourself. I always tell my students, brag, brag, brag. Be the most conceited person you've ever known in your life when you're writing your resume. No matter what it is you did, I want to know about it on that resume, okay? And then always ask yourself, so if I clean toilets at McDonald's, right? How did that help my company? That's what I'm always asking myself when I'm writing down something I did at a position. That's the next thing I think to myself is, how did that help the company by doing whatever it was? So I cleaned toilets at McDonald's. Awesome. That really helped increase customer satisfaction because the bathrooms were clean at McDonald's, right? That's what I want to see on a resume. I don't just want to see I cleaned bathrooms at McDonald's, right? This is how you're going to sell yourself and set yourself out from the next person. And that's really going to, that's what the people reading, the hiring managers and recruiters, that's what they're picking out when they're looking at job duties. So think about it. Did it increase your revenue as a company somehow? Did it increase customer satisfaction? Did it decrease production time somehow? Did it decrease delivery time? Think of it from a perspective of what's going to help the company. What do they need help with, right? That's what you need to put on your resume and show that you have done for another company that you would bring to a new company, if that helps. And the last thing I'm going to include for you all is, you're probably like, please stop talking, this is so long. But the last thing I want to tell you is try to include, even if it's like an extra section, any clubs, organizations, anything like that that you may be involved with or have been involved with. I don't know if you've ever all seen the commercial about Red Sox. It's a University of Phoenix commercial is what it is. And this person's going in, getting ready. They show him getting ready for the interview, and he puts his red socks on. And he goes to interview and he's sitting there waiting for the interviewer to pull him in. And there's like, you know, you can see the other socks, and none of them have red socks. And then the interviewer walks out and he has red socks on. And it's kind of, he's like, oh, you must have gone to the University of Phoenix. You have red socks. And then they connected and he got the job interview. So that's the basis of this commercial. But that's why I'm telling you, you never know who you might know or how you could connect with the person. And I'm sure you've heard it's not what you know, it's who you know that gets the job. Some of that kind of holds true. So that's why I'm telling you, if there's something that you can connect to a resume that can be that who you know kind of connection, include that in. So I'll give you an example. The first job I had out of college, I was in a co-ed business fraternity, and I had put that on my resume. That person that I had interviewed with for that position, I was up against about 4 other candidates, and I got that position based upon the person that interviewed me was also in that co-ed business fraternity, right? Like it just started a connection with us from the very beginning, something we could talk about, we could click on, and then I could sell myself to him on the qualifications that I had. So it's just something to remember when you're doing that. And so it will help you to kind of move forward, if that makes sense, and kind of move to that next level to get that interview. So I know this is super long, but hopefully it helped you with getting some basic resume portfolio thoughts in your brain as you start on my assignment, or if you're not one of my current students, to get your resume really sharpened and ready to get out there to get interviewed. So if you have questions, again, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm Marcy Reiter, M-A-R-C-I, last name's Reiter, R-E-I-T-E-R, and I am at Cleveland State. I'm in my office is in the Career Education Building at the Cleveland campus. So just ask around. I'm in E106C at this point, so please feel free, if my office hours are on, if I'm not here, leave me a message and I'll get back with you. But if not, you can try my office. It's 423-614-8718, or try me via email. I really try really quickly to get back to emails. I'm at mreiter, M-R-E-I-T as in Tom, E-R, at clevelandstatecc.edu. Even if you want me to look at a resume that you've done, put together, I'm happy to kind of give you some comments and suggestions and get them back to you. So if you're one of my students, get that resume portfolio together by the due date. I will remind you a million times before it's due, but start working on it. And if you have questions beforehand, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help. So I thank you for watching this. Hopefully you get something out of it, and good luck on your job hunt if that's where you're going. But if not, good luck on the rest of this semester, the rest of your degree, and I'm sure you'll do amazing things. So thanks, guys. Have a good day.